Peeps, we have stumbled across an absolute beast of a build here. This is hitting over 140 mil, ruffle stomping tier 3 content and doing very, very well in tier 4 content. It hits 3 times higher than anything that I've seen so far in the PTR, and that is with pretty bad gear as well, like very poor masterworks, just kind of done a +4 on all of my gear. Half of it's not ancestral and it's certainly not optimized in any way, shape or form. So if you're watching this after the little like cheat goblin guy has been enabled in the PTR, you can get perfect gear. You're going to be hitting way harder than what I was in this video. Also, just to give you a quick heads up, there will be no sexy editing at all in this video because I'm just planning on getting this out as fast as possible so that it's available for you guys to follow along while it's relevant, because the PTR is of course not lasting for very long, and I also think this build may be somewhat due to a bug, so something to definitely be aware of, that there is a chance that this one might change. We'll talk more about that, but let's start with the skill tree first and foremost, and we are starting with Flay. Flay is the skill that we're going to be using to alternate between our Upheaval, and this is because we are using Earth Strikers, so it's going to be very important that you make sure you weave these in. The reason I've gone for Flay over the other options is because of the vulnerable uptime, as well as it giving you 15 Fury as opposed to 12 from Lunging Strike. So Fury is definitely something that's important with this build. We are going full whack into Upheaval because this is the center of the build, and of course as many ranks as you can get in this as possible. You can get like way more than 27 if your gear is good as well. We are using Warpath, one of the new passives, which gives us 12% increased damage when we overpower for 4 seconds. This will be doing quite often, so this is very easy for us to use. We'll be using Violent Upheaval as our sole source of berserking. It's basically permanent when you're using this. We're not using Furious because we don't want to like auto attack, or sorry, basic skill attack 6 times before every Upheaval. It'd be very clunky. We've got Endless Fury. Again, very important that we are getting a lot of Fury regen because this build is thirsty. We've got the standard stuff over here: Imposing Presence, Martial Figure. We got 1 point into Enhanced Rallying Cry, or 2 should I say, and this is so that we have the Unstoppable. This is going to be very important later on, and of course the Fury regen from this is really nice. You can get away without using these two, so we are. We've got 3 points on Belligerence, which gives us a 9% damage multi when we use a basic skill. Again, we're alternating between Upheaval and our basic skill, so that's going to be very easy to maintain. 1 point into Challenging Shout here. We're going to need that DR, trust me. We've got 1 point into Warcry, not enhanced. Again, we don't need this for berserking. We are going to be using Booming Voice because we want the duration of those shouts to be as long as possible. Aggressive Resistance, Prolific Fury, both of those are maxed out naturally. Need the DR, need the Fury. We've got over here Pit Fighter, and we've got Slaying Strike. Slaying Strike, this is more of a like end game pick. If you're speed farming or leveling, take movement speed instead. This is just for like when bosses get really tanky, stuff like that. 1 point into Thick Skin and 3 points into Counter Offensive. We'll be fortifying through Warbringer. I'll show you on that on the Paragon board in a bit. But this is for a really nice 12% damage boost. Then down here we have maxed out Wrath of the Berserker. So this is going to give us a huge amount of cooldown reduction when we max it out. Got 11 ranks in Wallop. This is because of the Hellhammer, but this is huge. We've got Brute Force. We're doing a tons of overpowers. And 15% crit chance from heavy-handed, because of course we are using a 2-hander for Upheaval, which is where all of our damage is coming from. We have Furious Impulse to get Fury every time we swap weapons, and we've got Invigorating Fury because we're spending so much Fury that we are going to get a ton of healing from this. And then of course we've got Unbridled Rage, because again we're trying to spend Fury for reasons that will be more clear once we get into the gear, which is coming up just after I talk about the weapon assignment here. So Flay has to use a slashing weapon. I recommend one-handed swords because these are just faster to attack with. An Upheaval should be set to your 2-handed mace. Then moving into the actual gear itself, we're using the Air of Perdition, and I think this might be bugged because, as you have been seeing from the footage just above my head here, all of my damage looks pretty reasonable, except when I do a overpower crit. It seems to be like triple dipping on something. So before this helmet, I was doing like maybe 15 to 20 mil. Very, very, very good. As soon as I equipped this helmet, it went straight to 100 mil. So it absolutely should not be doing that. None of my other damage went up by that much. My regular crits went up by a bit. You know, my regular damage went up by a bit, but my overpower crits just went absolutely apeshit. So I feel like there's somewhat an issue here. I can't imagine that this is intended in any way, shape, or form. If I had to have a guess, I would say that what's happening here is that we're double dipping on the effect. We're getting the 60% per person that's like near me, specifically only on overpower crits for some whatever reason. And that is causing my damage to be absolutely absurd. So this is kind of like the core of the damage. Even without this though, we were quite comfortably hitting up to 20 million, and that was before my gear was anywhere near as good as it is now, and it's not even that good. Then we've got Tyrael's Might. This is about the only thing that's keeping us alive. So it is a massive amount of damage reduction and resistances, an absolute must pick, or we just wouldn't be able to stay alive for more than 3 seconds, especially in Torment 4. For gloves, you're going to want more or less the same stats, but you know, you're going to want to try and high roll that upheaval ranks. That's the most important thing here for you. You want to try and actually make sure you're going up and above 30 to get the most damage as possible. Now, I did forget to actually mention the greater affix priority on the Uber uniques. For the Air of Perdition, it's definitely core skills. You want to masterwork that as well. For Tyrael's Might, currently in live, it's the damage reduction, but with the way that, you know, the resistances are in tier 4, you may want to actually consider having at least one masterwork on resist all to try and help you cap out there, because I'm having trouble keeping capped. Moving down to the pants, we have Tybalt's Will. We have very high uptime on Unstoppable. There is something that you can do to actually make it better. What I would recommend doing is, especially when you're fighting a boss, for some reason I'm stuck on the spot here, that's weird, PTR. So when you pop Wrath of the Berserker, you want to pop your 2 shouts then and just kind of wail away. And when you see your Unstoppable buff, which is those 2 chains disappear, then pop Rallying Cry. This will help you extend the window and do, you know, damage for the longest amount of time, because Tybalts give you 20% extra damage while you're unstoppable, and that's the best way to extend that window. And the reason I did Wrath of the Berserker first is because with shouts, you reduce the cooldown of Wrath of the Berserker when you use them through Marshall. So that's the order you want to do that in. 4 gems in everything. Obviously, runes are not out at the moment, so we're just putting rubies in everything. I'll update the planner with the runes as soon as we know which ones to use. So that'll be immediately tomorrow, but you can use it this way and do insane damage already. For the masterworking and the greater affixes, I would go for the damage reduction or the max life. Moving on to boots, I have Yen's Blessings, which are a good option, but I would rather have Rakenovs if I had them, because Rakenovs have cooldown reduction on them, as well as actually non-physical damage, which will help a little bit with the Hellhammer burn. Not a big deal, but I think they're more suited for this build, but this is still a very good pair of boots if you want to use this instead. What we're getting from this, which is really important, is that all res, and we're also getting that casts a skill, a non-mobility skill, so one of our shouts every 8 seconds, which is pretty good, especially if it casts a Rallying Cry or War Cry. Now, for masterworking on these, you're going to want to try and aim for, if they're Rakenovs, you want to get the cooldown reduction on these. Either the all-star, I mean, actually everything on this one would be a good hit, so I wouldn't worry too much. If you're on these, just whatever you hit is pretty much good. Wait until you get Rakenovs before you start infesting lots in them. But if you really wanted to, go for the resource regen, because it is a bit of an issue with this build at times, but you can get away with it 99% of the time. Now, the main flavor unique, this is the Hellhammer, and what we want to do with this is get all of the ranks on Upheaval. You want the masterwork, you want the greater affix on Upheaval, and you want to try and get some, I mean, if you can get Wallop as well, that's fantastic, but everything on Upheaval. The unique effect doesn't really matter. It does a little bit of damage, doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's mainly those 2 passives that we're here for, because it makes Upheaval hit so goddamn hard, and you get all of that Upheaval size. You basically get capped on Upheaval size if you high roll it, so that is huge. It means that you're just clearing out a massive groups of enemies. When you overpower, you literally wipe half a dungeon clean. It's one of the most satisfying things actually I've ever played, so I'm absolutely in love with this. And yeah, it's just an all-round amazing weapon. You're going to farm Beast in Ice a whole bunch to get yourself one of these. Then, as for gems, we're going for crit damage. Now, you'll see that I don't actually have my grandfather equip, and I can't seem to go... Oh, I can access it from here? Wow, okay, that's a long-range chest. Holy moly. But yeah, so we are stacking up crit because we're using a grandfather, and this is going to, you know, multiply our crit. So we definitely want to get that. Right, quick cut. I had to quickly go do my enchants again. They were slightly off. I've been testing a few builds. For the gloves, it's Edge Masters. It wasn't what you saw before. You want Edge Masters. This gives you a nice 20% buff on your damage if your Fury is high, which most of the time when you actually do the Upheaval, it has to be, so you get most of that damage bonus every time. For the two one-handed weapons then, you want basically the exact same stats on both, which are not what you see on screen. They are Strength, Max Life, Critical Strike, and critical damage, and then chance for Upheaval to deal double damage. Now, as for the priority on these, the Greater Affix, if it lands on Strength, Crit, or Max Life, is neither here nor there. Ideally, you'd probably want it on either Strength or Crit, but for the Masterworking, very important, you want to hit the chance that Upheaval does double damage. You can get this to 88% if you Masterwork it on both the two one-handed weapons, and you have a high roll in them. So that's your #1 priority for these. And for the aspects, we're using Sundered Ground because this gives us an overpower Upheaval with extra damage every 20 seconds. And then we also have Earth Strikers because, like I mentioned, this is a weapon swapping build. So you want to be swapping between them, and you get an overpower every 8 weapon swaps with, again, a nice juicy power up. So that's really important to make sure you're doing that Flay, Upheaval, Flay, Upheaval. Then, like I mentioned before, got the grandfather, scaling the crit. For Masterworks on this one, super simple. Hit the damage, very, very good. If you get the max life, or if you get the all stat, it's not terrible. Max life scales overpower, but also helps you stay alive. All stats is also a pretty good option too. But the damage is the best for damage. Then moving up to the ring, we have Ring of Red Fury. This is huge because this is where we'll be getting all of our crits from. We run no crit chance on any of the rest of our gear if we have the choice, because we are just going to spend 100 Fury and crit that way. So right now, I think each Upheaval is costing 80, so every other Upheaval will crit, more or less. And that's how we're going to be doing this. And far as the Masterworking goes on this one, all on crit damage. Everything on crit damage. Attack speed is okay if you hit it, but crit damage is the #1 thing that you're going to want to aim for here. We then have a regular ring, which we're going to run Bold Chieftains on. Get that shout cooldown down, because our cooldown reduction is going to be pretty bad with this build. So we really, really, really want to try and get that on here. This ring is terrible. I just haven't found a better one. Do not copy these stats. They suck. But what we're going to be going for is we're going to go for Strength, critical damage, and lucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable. This is the only way we can make enemies vulnerable, so you definitely need this on here. For the Tempers, you're going to want to get crit damage as well as cooldown reduction to Wrath of the Berserker. Then for Masterworks, if you can hit the cooldown reduction on Wrath of the Berserker, that's perfect. Greater affixes, ideally you're going to want that on the Strength or the crit damage. And then finally, we have a Banished Lord's Talisman. This was really, really good. I actually got this after I got the screenshot of the 140, and this probably would have added a few more 10,000s on top of that, or a good maybe I don't know, 20 to 30,000 at least. And this is going to be a huge part of your DPS, and the most important part of it is that roll at the bottom, the how much it increases your crit by. So you want this to be higher above everything else. If you get a 60% that isn't an ancestral, I would still take that over like one that's like 30 and is an ancestral. If you can get greater affixes, you want to go for core skills. This is the most important one. And then max life. Attack speed isn't terrible, actually. It does help out a lot with like the smoothness of the build. But max life would be a lot better because tankiness in T4 especially is really, really important. As for gems here, you can see I've gone for all skulls because armor is my main weakness at the moment. I am looking at alternatives to fix that, but it's basically just like Paragon diff at this point. But you could also roll off crit strike damage on the gloves for armor if you wanted to go that route instead. Now, let's take a look at the Paragon, and this is a work in progress because obviously we're all still learning the new Paragon, what's going to be, you know, the most efficient way to spend those bazillion points that you get, and, you know, things like that. But let's talk about the glyphs. We have Aya down here. damage reduction, damage while berserking, and also a ton of extra damage when you are near enemies, so close enemy when it's a legendary. Very, very good because it basically caps out our Blood Rage Paragon node over here, which gives us 30% extra damage based on our damage while berserking, which we need at least 300% off to cap, which we get literally just through the Paragon board and through this, so we don't have to have it on any of our gear, which is perfect. And just to quickly nip this in the bud, because it's a question I get every single time, you do not need to kill bleeding enemies to get the damage bonus. That's only to get the berserking, which we do not need, so don't worry about it. We get the damage bonus, and that is what we're actually after. Moving up into the Carnage board, we have Might. Might is super easy, 8% extra damage while wielding a two-hander. That's us. And then we do have the Carnage Paragon node for the attack speed that we get for berserking and critting while we are berserking. Moving over, we've got some damage reduction nodes here, which is really, really nice. We've got Crusher over here, which gives us a big fat multiplier on our overpowers when wielding a mace, which we are. So that's huge. I've not made all of these legendary either. Dude, I could do so much extra damage tomorrow. We got Blood Rage, like I said. We're picking up as much health and like any damage reduction where we can. But again, I'm getting Paragon diffed here because I don't have enough to really do everything at the moment. Then as we move up into the Warbringer board, this is how we're fortifying. Really important to be fortified with a build like this because it increases your overpowered damage. Also, max life plays a part into that, which is why you'll see I pick up so much extra max life as a priority. I've gone for all of the max fury nodes, but they're not really that super important. Again, they're more there for the secondary thing, which is like the fury on kill and also the maximum life that's here. But we don't actually scale with max fury, which is going to be slightly different than what I think a lot of you guys might be used to from live, because that's how every good build is working right now. We've got Marshall here, and this is what I said earlier about the shouts reduce the cooldown of our ultimate. So you always want to use the ultimate before the shout, so you're getting the bonus from this one. And the legendary power on this one is just flat 10% damage, which is insane, and that goes up as the glyph levels up. And finally, over on the Decimator board, which is just a really nice, easy 20% extra damage for us because we're always overpowering, always making enemies vulnerable. We've got Wrath over here. Now, Wrath is something that I'm experimenting with because, well, first and foremost, we get an insane amount of crit damage from it, like actually insane amount of crit damage. And then it has a really, really, really easy to use, like just a pure physical damage multiplier on it when you make it legendary, which is huge, right? This is a very, very easy to leverage glyph for this build. But when you get into tier 4, I kind of want to get maybe Territorial, and this is the one that I would consider swapping. I haven't masterworked my gear perfectly yet, and I haven't got like all ancestral gear, so perhaps that's the difference maker. But for now, I'm thinking maybe I need a little bit of extra DR. But, you know, this is definitely the best one from a damage point of view. And then again, we've gone for anywhere that we can see max life. As you go into the 200s, as you get all of your Paragon points, I'd recommend just going and soaking up as much armor, additional damage while berserking that you can, any extra health or whatever you can find on the board. It's all pretty just straightforward stuff at that point. None of it has any like real impact. They're just nice little tiny bonuses to X, Y, and C at that stage. That's the build. The link will be down to the planner in the description below. If anything is different in the planner from what you've seen in this video, it's because I've updated it from the recording of this video, because I'm going to play it a little bit more tonight. Maybe I might find some fine-tuning adjustments to make there. But that is basically it. Massively looking forward to the next couple of days with the little cheat goblin activated. This little guy here is going to presumably let us like do whatever the hell we want, and that's going to be when we really put the gas down on this build testing. So look forward to that. Don't forget to drop a sub if you want to make sure to not miss them. Like the video if you liked the video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye bye, love you.